So I'm sitting in Seattle, which is almost the home of Paul Sparks, who's from Tacoma. And Paul is one of the founders and instigators and inspirations behind something called the Parish Collective. And Paul, tell us a little bit about what is the Parish Collective, how did it get started, and what's happening in it?
Yeah, sure. So Al, we started the Parish Collective about 2.5 years ago, and it was born out of the desire to connect together expressions of church and mission that were happening in neighborhoods. Several of us were experimenting with things and felt a bit alone, and thought, what if we started to connect together? What if we started to collaborate, partner? And what we found is that this is percolating all over the place. And we started to wonder if we shouldn't connect at a higher level.
Now you talk about some of us. Who are the some of us?
Well, there was 3 expressions in Seattle and 1 in Tacoma.
Oh, okay. Yeah, and there was you.
Yeah, Tim Soren's.
Tim Soren's.
Tim Soren's co-founder of this. Ben Cott from Awake Church, just a huge instrumental person on this. And then, of course, Dwight Friesen, who was working at the Seattle School.
Right. And you talk about something percolating. Say a bit more about that.
Yeah,
What's percolating?
Sure. I think that what we discovered is that in neighborhoods there are people working on the ground. There are mothers. There are small business owners. A whole variety of people that are really caring for their place and working on the ground, but often it isn't perceived as the work of the church or the work of mission and ministry. And so the task of the Parish Collective was to say, why don't we shine a light on those things, champion those people, and really connect them together and give them a sense that what they're doing in everyday life could be something quite meaningful.
So, in a sense, part of what Parish Collective is about is an idea of God's percolating things in neighborhoods and communities. How do we help to shine some light upon that and get those stories out?
That's exactly right.
Is that right?
Yeah. I mean, if you think, Alan, if you imagine in a typical neighborhood, you might have 500 people that are people of faith that are doing at least some of the habits of their life in ways that are hopeful and redemptive and caring, even if it's just having a dinner with neighbors or doing, some small activity. If those things were championed and considered to be really the act of what it means to be church together, and if you could illuminate those characters all throughout a neighborhood and say, yes, you'll have your unique expressions on Sunday mornings, you'll have your unique ethos and values and denominations, but in the day-to-day of life, you may be able to function more as the church of that place together.
Now, you've chosen the language of parish, which sounds kind of Anglican. But you don't have to be an Anglican to be connected with this. Tell us, why did you choose the word parish?
Well, one thing we found is that nearly every tradition, nearly every denomination has something in their roots that's meaningful when it comes to this idea of neighborhood, of a livable community place. But parish seemed to be a word that really resonated deeply because it had the historic roots of geography. It included the land. So much of our ecclesial life doesn't include the land that we walk on, that we use, the built environment, the natural environment. And so parish had the historic roots of spirituality and faith, of the way of Christ, and yet it also resonated with just being in the hood together.
People are just rooted in place, in land, and buildings. Now, if how do I connect with parish? How do I connect with what you guys are up to?
Well, one of the first things that we are always thinking about is to make visible the work that's being done on the ground. So if a person is connected to a group, and that might be a church, it might be a parish, it might be a nonprofit, a faith-based nonprofit, or it might be a couple of neighbors who have connected together and said we care about our neighborhood. We ask them to get online at
Parish. On your website.
That's right, parishcollective.org.
Yeah.
And the map is kind of a centerpiece of our thing, So we are trying to illuminate these characters on the map and let people see that there's a fabric of care that resides in their neighborhood that they can connect to.
So if I'm listening to this and I'm part of a church and I'm going, this makes a lot of sense, but what do? I can go to your website and find others, perhaps close by, who are up to this.
You might even be surprised to find that there's people already
In your
doing this in your neighborhood.
Yeah.
And then we also we have in certain cities along the West Coast, we have a group of organizers who care kind of about connecting the people in neighborhoods in a particular city, giving them some platforms to share best practices. It's not so demanding as to take them out of their denominational life or their neighborhood life, but it's just spaces where they can come together and say, we're not alone doing this neighborhood work, this is meaningful. And also, in our highly mobile culture, it's just been fantastic. If you've got somebody who moves out of your neighborhood due to their work or any number of variables, and you've invested all kinds of time developing an ethos of care and community, and then they take off. If they don't have a place where there's already something existing, they have to start from square one again. So a big part of the heartbeat of this is to say, we want every neighborhood, every parish to have a tangible expression happening so that when somebody moves, they can move right into a network of care again.
Wow, good for you. Now, hey, Seattle, Tacoma's your hood.
Yes.
Where you're located,
Yeah.
how did this get started for you? What was it that began to percolate for you to get this started?
You know what it was, Al? It was, we started asking this silly question of where is our church on Monday or Tuesday or Wednesday, because we had started to interview different pastors and ministry leaders, and they would all answer that the church was the people.
Yeah.
And so then on Monday or Tuesday, we would ask them where the church is, and they would point to the building. And we just started to say, what would people have to do if they wanted to be outward in their faith, missional, reaching outward, if they wanted to grow in their spiritual formation, not as an isolated individual act, but collectively to be formed as God's people. And if they wanted to develop a common life, friendships and care for one another, what would they have to do? And the only thing that we could come up with was parish. They needed a place for those three things to be happening. The outward reach, the spiritual formation, and the common life together. Place was the only intersecting variable where all those could be happening at once. So that's drove us to it literally was a 2-year process for us of just getting to the idea of place. It started with just listening. We had felt that we were disconnected from the street. We didn't know what was happening on the ground. So we just started a listening process, which I know that's been huge for your work, is just getting people to listen.
Yeah.
So that's been a big deal for us.
Now, over those several years, as you've rooted down and listened, I know just in the conversations we had, things have begun to sprout out. You were talking about some small businesses that were begun.
Yes.
Tell some stories about that.
Okay.
Yeah.
I thought you were talking about all the character defects that we started.
Yeah,
to discover.
no. We all got those.
Okay. Yeah, so if you were to walk down the street in my neighborhood, it's about a 15-block area, and we would pass by 8 different small businesses that we've started, different characters in our congregation. You'd find a director of the farmer's market, you'd find the guys who moved into the Catholic worker, all aspects of life. People, mothers caring for their children at the playground, it's all of life. And so you would find this visible, tangible expression of God's people in every day. And the thing is I'm talking to you about just our specific little group. But really, when you start embedding yourself in the neighborhood that way, what we've discovered is everyone becomes a potential partner. A lot of people have redemptive hopes for their neighborhood. Reconciling dreams, redemptive dreams, and so we no longer think only of our church and what we're doing. We try to say all of these characters, all of these buildings, all of the natural environment. The whole thing becomes part of the collaboration, for redemptive flourishing in the neighborhood.
Wonderful. It reminds me of a question that I get asked all the time, and I'm sure you do. In all of this, what does this have to do with Jesus and the gospel?
Yeah.
You must get that all the time.
I've heard of the term too.
Yeah, right. What do you say?
I say that this has been fundamental for us, is just this idea that Jesus' hope, and really the hope of God, is that we would find a way of faithful relationship with God, with one another, and with the created world that we're called to steward. And you have all of these visions and dreams that Jesus and Paul and others throughout the Gospels are portraying of this wall of division that divides difference, racial, age, gender, all of these things, male, female. These are like just main topics streaming through the scriptures. And we talk about these things in the church, but the neighborhood is the platform for the genuine reality of those things to come together. Now, that said, I think there's an insularity that can develop in the parish. And our philosophy with Parish Collective is rooted and linked, because we feel like it's not enough just to have a rooted expression. You need to break kind of the bonds of insularity that you can develop as a culture by sharing stories across places, the cross-pollination and best practices and storytelling and encouragement. And so you might have a neighborhood on one side of the city who financially they're in deep poverty and hurting, but they have an incredible community ethos they've developed out of sheer survival.
Yeah.
And then on the other side, you have one that's maybe quite wealthy, but they have no idea how to get along in everyday life. Well, this makes for a combination that could be tremendous if they have some collaboration.
Absolutely.
So it's that rooting and linking piece that we feel like really awakens us to the reality of God and also tests our faith. When we first moved into our neighborhood, we discovered that all the things we were proclaiming, even singing songs about and telling people we'd go to our deathbed around, all of a sudden those things became tested elements. Could we actually
put them into practice?
Put them in practice, not gossip about one another, not backstab one another. When somebody did something, somebody goes into a neighborhood pub and ends up getting drunk, and they wake up the next morning. Now, for the first time in some of their lives, and the first time in my life, we have to deal with the fact that our whole church, there's ramifications. There's ramifications for what God's doing in the parish because they're instrumental in that witness.
It changes. Life becomes practical. The gospel becomes rooted and engaged amongst real people.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Paul, Parish Collective. I just pray that a lot of people listening to this will visit that website and begin to discover connections, because, as you say, God's up to something in our neighborhoods, in our parishes, in our communities. We got to go join God there.
We got to go join. I'm very grateful to the work that your network has been doing. Yeah. Your book, I think I've told you, it's been quite instrumental for us as well. So.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for
peace.
having me. Yeah.
Take care.